So live streaming started, sir. Thank
Wonderful.
you. Thank you. Mr. Ganesh, the 6 o'clock will start now. Yes. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed my proud privilege to welcome each one of you who have joined this another wonderful event of MMA. We eagerly look forward to this event year after year because this is the event which we organize as a Raghupillai Memorial Oration, and you all know Mr. Raghupillai, who is a pioneer in the field of retail industry, and this has been instituted by Pradipto Mahapatra, was a past president of MMA, so we fondly remember him too. And every year we used to get some outstanding speakers to come and share their insights. And this year we have another outstanding speaker who is going to be sharing her insights on another important, interesting theme, women in leadership and future perspectives. And Mr. Ganesh will brief you more about a little bit about Raghupillai Memorial Lecture. And I would like to really formally invite each one of you this evening talk, which is being organized by MMA in association with CFI. We always work together. We do a lot of events together, and we are indeed privileged. And it's my privilege to welcome all the viewers watching this program live on Zoom, as well as our live webinar, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, Twitter, and also our live on radio air, which is also our MMA radio is also live on air. A lot of people watch this MMA. And as usual, if you have any questions, I request all the people who have joined this program on Zoom to put your questions in the chat box, and the distinguished speakers are given address to anybody else. They'll be more than happy to respond to your questions. And all the viewers who are watching the program on other social media portals, as usual, there's a number on your screen. Please send your questions to that number. Otherwise, you can put it in the same YouTube or Facebook. And our team is working. They'll collate all the questions, and as much time as available, we'll be happy to address to all your questions. And I also like to welcome all my members of the MMA Managing Committee, past presidents, again, all the special invitees. Today, our distinguished special awardee to Nirmala Menon, and a lot of awardees from CFA coaches who are getting recognized this evening, and distinguished people from the CFA, the institute, who contribute significantly to the growth of coaching, which is very, very important. And now to tell you more about the event and also to take forward the further proceedings, I will request Ganesh Chella. Ganesh is co-founder and managing director of Coaching Foundation of India Private Limited. Over to you, Mr. Ganesh.
Thank you, Group Captain. Warm welcome to all of you who've joined us virtually for this wonderful evening today to celebrate women in leadership. Group Captain, wonderful collaborating with MMA every year. This is the 8th year, and we always look forward to this event. Special thanks to Mrs. Abanti, Sankaranarayanan for being here to deliver the Raghupillai Memorial Oration. Thanks to the entire community of MMA and the CFI coaching community. I'd like to spend a few minutes setting the context for this event. CFI, as you know, is a coaching and leadership institute, and we work with young aspiring men and women who want to achieve their potential as leaders, be effective in what they do as leaders, make big transitions, and in all enjoy their life in what they do and contribute to leading others and organizations. In the course of our work for well over a decade, as we've worked with aspiring men and women, the question that has always come up in our mind is this: is the path to executive leadership the same for men and women? Or is it different? This is a question that has always cropped up as we worked with men and women. There are several opinions, there were several hunches, there were several views. We had some inkling of what it might be. But a little over 2 years ago, we undertook a very, very important research titled Women in Leadership and What It Takes. We spoke to our community of over close to 50 coaches who worked with a large number of women themselves. We spoke to young women who are aspiring to achieve leadership. We spoke to leaders who've been successful. We spoke to sponsors, clients, HR professionals, And at the end of all of these research, one thing became very clear. While the path to leadership is similar for men and women, it is also different. Women most certainly face several additional challenges. That was abundantly clear. And if that was indeed so, it was very, very clear that there was a crying need for a separate space. There was a crying need for a woman-only program in this country. And that is really what CFI became very acutely aware of. What we also became acutely aware of was that there was a need to create a safe space for women to come together, open up and deliberate about their aspirations, about their dreams, about their successes, and of course about their vulnerabilities. There was a need to create a space where they could talk to one another. They could also talk to a trusted helper in the form of a coach to pull all this together and then create a path that is unique for themselves, keeping in mind their own context and their own needs. Thanks to our research and the commitment of a large number of women coaches in the CFI community, the entire CFI team, the entire program office, we were able to come up with She Leads, a women-only program for the first time in the country. The program created this safe space. The program also looked at helping women looking at themselves, gaining perspectives, developing skills, and of course, addressing some of the beliefs that might have been limiting them. Over the last 2 years, we've had the opportunity, the privilege to touch the lives of over 50 aspiring women leaders who have truly benefited from this journey and have spread a great word around for more and more people to join this ever-growing family. Today's conclave is a great opportunity to affirm our faith and belief in women leadership and to rededicate ourselves to this path of She Leads. But more importantly, today is a day when we want to celebrate. We want to recognize. We want to acknowledge the journey of other women leaders, the contribution of our coaches, the contribution of other women who've made a difference to people in their lives in the journey of women leadership. So friends, as we do that, we are filled with hope and optimism that we will have this privilege of touching the lives of women leaders and helping them to keep the She Leads journey alive. So warm welcome once again for being here, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this evening. Thank you very, very much. I now have the first very, very pleasurable job to do. And as I said, today is a day of celebration, and learning and celebration go together. I have great pleasure in firstly introducing my dear friend, Nirmala Menon. Hi, Nirmala.
Hi, Ganesh.
Very, very warm welcome to you, Nirmala.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nirmala is here for a very special purpose. Nirmala is an HR professional with over 30 years of experience. And she has dedicated a big part of her working life to the cause of diversity and inclusion. She has, in her role as the founder of Interweave, made a huge impact to several client organizations and employees in these organizations. She has been a leading voice of diversity and inclusion in the country. Through the various industry bodies that she's been a part of, she has been a strong advocate of the cause of diversity and inclusion, especially creating the right safe spaces for women to flourish and build sustainable careers in organizations. Nirmala Menon graduated from XLRI Jamshedpur, where she did her postgraduate diploma in human resources. And today, CFI is privileged to bestow on Nirmala the highest honor in CFI. And to do that, I'd like to read out a citation. In recognition of her sustained and exemplary contribution as a thought leader, facilitator, and mentor in promoting a climate that respects diversity and inclusion, leading to sustainable careers and the overall growth and development of women in leadership, CFI is delighted to admit Nirmala Menon as Honorary Fellow CFI, along with all accompanying benefits. Nirmala, very warm welcome to the fraternity of CFI. We are most delighted to welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Ganesh. I'm absolutely delighted, and thank you for those kind words of appreciation. This is certainly an honor that I accept with a lot of pride and gratitude. I'm also acutely aware of the past recipients of this recognition, and I stand humbled because they were giants in the field even as I was making my own career. So in a sense, this is extremely special. This is a very special honor, and it will stay a lot in my heart rather than just in the office lobby. So it will have a very special place for me. Thank you to everyone that nominated and supported this process. When Ganesh spoke to me about this a couple of weeks ago, when he called me up about this nomination, I was very pleasantly surprised. I've always considered myself to be a late bloomer and, kind of believed that I would never really have a sufficient enough body of work, so to say, to ever have any kind of recognition. I've not had a traditional career. I was one of those people that stepped in and out of the workplace, and I battled a lot of lack of confidence and a sense of inadequacy and fear of failure and multiple things for the longest time. But when I look back, I think that experience is really what got me to work in the space I'm working in today. A space where I'm able to give back, a space where I am setting women off on adventures to achieve their full potential in work and in life. And I've been having so much fun with it. It really didn't seem like I wanted recognition. But CFI, thank you very much for noticing, and really, really appreciate that, you've given me this high honor. I completely value it, and thank you for that. Well, like I was saying, no achievement in life is really a solo effort. It really has to happen with a lot of people, and I not walked this path alone. I've had a lot of help and support from multiple people, friends, family, clients, and a very special shout out to a couple of good friends, Senthil Kumar and Nathan. Senthil, I think, is a CFI graduate and is here in this group today. Senthil, if you're here, thank you so much. You were the guys that actually nudged me out of my comfort zone and got me back on my career track. This is simply to say that we can never underestimate the value of affirmation and encouragement. And I was very fortunate to have good friends that, put me back on track. And I think all of us should do that for each other. So thank you very much for that. I wouldn't be here otherwise. To my family, particularly my mother, for having sown in me the seed for adventure and ambition, something that she herself could not pursue. And then, of course, my husband, Prashant, for being a rock completely. He just didn't beat an eyelid when I said I wanted to start Interweave at age 45. When people were kind of thinking of hanging up their boots. And I was like, hey, I want to get started on a very new field. And thank you very much for that, Prashant. And of course, my fabulous colleagues at Interweave. Their hard work is really what has brought us to the state that we are in as a leader in this space. And I'm standing on all of their shoulders as I receive this honor today. Thank you very much. And I know that this is not the end of the journey. There is a long way to go. There is a lot more stories to be heard, a lot of stories to be said, more lives to be touched. I will accept that this honor is just confirming to me that I'm on the right path. Thank you once again for your choice. And I will do my best to justify this trust that you've placed in me. Thank you very much, CFI, and to everyone here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nirmala. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
The celebration will continue for a few more minutes. When we decided to launch She Leads after the research, we shouted out to our community of coaches. And 5 very senior coaches came together and said, we are in it. We want to do this. We have forever been waiting there for that call. And therefore, today is a time when we want to present a citation in honor of 5 women leaders and senior CFI coaches who all joined together to make CFI's She Leads program possible. And present, and these are Anita Gupta, an advertising professional turned executive coach, Saroja Kannan, a marketing professional turned executive coach, Sharda, an organization development consultant and trainer turned executive coach, Sudha Kannan, a consultant, trainer, facilitator turned executive coach, and Lata, an HR professional turned executive coach. All of them gave so generously to the cause of She Leads and were part of the founding team that made this possible, and have really endeared themselves to the hearts of several dozens of people. So for all of them, I'm delighted to present a citation in honor. So may we please see the citation, please. Anita, Sharada, Sudha, Saroja, and Lata, thank you for your tireless efforts in helping us shape She Leads, our women leadership program. Your involvement in the design of the program, your role as a coach to the participants has hugely contributed to its success. You've been a huge source of inspiration and guidance to a growing community of participants across the country. Above all, thank you for being a great role model of living and practicing the art of coaching, the CFI way, which we are all so proud of. I now request Lata to say a few words on behalf of the Gang of Five.
Yeah, thank you, Ganesh. Thank you so much. On behalf of Anita, Saroja, Sharada, and Sudha, and of course on my own behalf, a big thank you to CFI, to our coaches, and also to all the coaches and mentors who have actually shaped each of us over the years. I actually want to start by quoting some of the coaches that we coached. The first one, I realize now that the inhibitions that held me back were of my own making. Realizing this has been the single largest contributor to my sense of self-worth. A second one, conforming to someone else's idea of who I should be was stressful and limiting. I'm today more confident, more self-assured and assertive, and have found a way to claim my seat at the table without letting go of my identity. A third one, I realize the thrill of asking for what is due to me and getting it because I deserve it. And finally, it's important to make time for myself and not be consumed by guilt when I do so. Four really typical statements of impact that reverberated across most of our She Leads coaching engagements. What was really very special about She Leads for the coaches was the fact that as women who have been there and done that, all of us actually related, understood, empathized, challenged, pushed, and appreciated in a way that they had perhaps never experienced before. For us coaches, it was a chance to help someone cross the hurdles that we ourselves had struggled through our way to the top. We understood their world, and I think we understood the ambitions and the anxieties that they came with. When we were discussing this at the design stage, one of us recalled a song that was a favorite song. It said, "I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky." I think that actually captures the spirit of the She Leads program. For each of us, that was really the anthem that we really sang to. For all of us, the five of us, and of course, the 45 other women coaches in CFI, there have been others who came after us and coached others in the subsequent batches. This program, the She Leads program, was actually a labor of love and passion. For us, it was a culmination, it was a very fitting culmination to a career full of highs and of course, some lows. It was also about doing our share to prepare a generation of women leaders for the exciting times ahead. I know Abanti is going to talk about the exciting times ahead, and we really are very excited that we have contributed to preparing a generation of women leaders to that. So thank you, Ganesh. Thank you, CFI. Thank you, all our coaches and all the coach community. It was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I must, before handing over to Group Captain, acknowledge the contribution of Vaishnavi, who led the entire championship of the program, the research, and being the spirit behind all the 4 programs that have run so far. And behind successful women leadership program is also a man, Suresh Srinivasan, our CEO, who are so relentless in driving it and not giving up and making it a success. So thanks all of you. Now, Group Captain, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. Once again, many congratulations to Nirmala, Menon, and the she lead coaches. It's so inspiring to listen to each one of you. I wish I had an opportunity to get coached by you. Maybe I would have done something more better than what we are doing now. Thanks so much. And now it's indeed my proud privilege. I know we're all come to the moment which we are all been waiting to listen to one of the outstanding thought leaders, one of the outstanding women leaders. Let me have the privilege of introducing our chief guest for this evening, Abanti Sankaranarayanan. Abanti Sankaranarayanan, our profile is the envy of anybody who is really seeing a profile. And Abanti is an economic graduate from St. Stephen's and also a graduate from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. She got over 20 years of experience in consumer industry. Prior to Diageo, she was a part of a Tata Administrative Service since 1992. 17 years of service, yet outstanding assignments all over the Tata Group, including Global Beverages London and Tata Hotels at New York and also in Mumbai. And also, Abani also co-chair of International Spirits and Wine Association. She also served on the board of Advertising Council and been recognized by the number of women magazines, business magazines, as the most influential woman, even as recently as 2020, and also Fortune India and much more. And Abanti is also is the first person from Diageo to be part of the woman from India and the first person from Diageo to be part of keeper of the quack. I really understand. I want to understand what is the keeper of the quack. I think many of you know. This is the person, the outstanding committee which recognize who produce and promote Scotch. We are so happy, madam. I think you promote good Scotch. We all enjoy the evening actually, and that's what makes us so happy to us. And we are all eagerly looking forward to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's my proud privilege to present to you Abanti Sankaranarayanan. She'll be delivering the address on the theme "Women in Leadership: Future Perspective." Over to you, madam.
Thank you so much, Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar. Thank you, Mr. Chella, Suresh. Fantastic. Congratulations to Nirmala and, of course, the 5 lady stars from the She Leads coaches. I mean, I was really mesmerized by what I heard. I'm just checking. Am I audible, visible, Group Captain? Okay, super. So I was really mesmerized listening to the proceedings so far. And, I just feel incredibly reassured about the future of aspiring women leaders in this country when I hear everything that this group has been doing and proposes to do. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be here today with all of you. So I will just share my screen. Okay. All right. Okay, so I actually want to say that, there is a lot that is known and written about women in leadership. And what I'm going to share with you are just some emerging perspectives from a corporate, from a corporate world angle. And importantly, from my own personal experience. So nothing that is here that I'm going to talk about is actually canned or taken from any book. Everything is my own personal experience. So hopefully you will see that as authentic. I want to start with the note of what Ganesh said earlier, filled with hope and optimism, right? You said that. And really, I think there has been a big shift in corporate India in the last decade or so. You've heard, I have been working for some time now, for actually nearly 28 years. And I have witnessed firsthand the big shift that has happened. And what you see is on this slide is only a small manifestation of the fact that women in corporate India, women in leadership positions, has now come into popular and public discourse. It is a subject which carries a lot of attention. There is a lot of thinking, I have to tell you, in boardrooms, in progressive companies about how to strengthen the leadership pipeline among women. And what is also very heartening is I have seen that over the last 10 years, women in leadership positions are present not just in corporate India, in traditional sort of corporate India, but in other sort of adjacencies. So I interact a lot with law firms, investment banks, even the startup ecosystem. And what I see there is there are more women that one is meeting, and they are all in positions of some influence. You also see that kind of in adjacent occupations, right? So if I think about my own industry, I see that there are women bartenders who are coming up. And I'm sure many of you have witnessed that in other parts of the world. We don't see that a lot in India, but it is happening. Some time back, I heard and spoke about at a forum about women bouncers in restaurants and outside restaurants and bars. So these are new sort of frontiers that women are conquering. We all know about women in the armed forces, women pilots, women in sectors where you would not see them, such as construction. So I think there is really a big underlying shift that has happened. And I think, therefore, absolutely the work that all of you have been doing, the coaches, everything that CFI has been doing, I think it all has played a role. I also see a lot of forums where, there is coaching, especially for women. There are initiatives to attract women to come back into the working roles, into careers after they have taken some time out for personal reasons. I see, organizations, startups which are coming up, which want to create networks of women. So those are all like 1,000 flowers blooming, right? So really coming back to the point that we must absolutely be optimistic and filled with hope. But on the other hand, what we can't shy away from, absolutely, is the fact that while there are big shifts in corporate India, there is still a lot to do. And that's more to say the journey has only just started. It's not to say that, we haven't done enough, but it's really about there is more to do. The direction of travel is right, but we need to keep going at it. And there are, again, lots of markers to the more to do. So if you look at what is happening in India, it's the famous leaky bucket syndrome, right? You see that there is nearly 50% women in the sort of tertiary educated graduate space, 25% women coming into entry-level professionals. But look at the number in senior management, that's 4%. And that is the cause of concern. Even board members is only 11. And we all know that, there is a Companies Act guideline which requires at least one woman as a director on listed companies. But we also know that there are many companies which still don't have that one woman. And in a lot of cases, the women are basically from the family versus, independent professional women. So in a way, there is a little bit of, I suppose, easier way to fill the seat, so to speak, in a board. But having said which, India Inc. is now willing to pay much more attention to fix the gender diversity problem. And that goes back to what I said earlier about, this being a boardroom discussion in many, many progressive companies. As a country, I think, again, this is really important to understand. As a country, there is still a long way to go. And why I see this is because fundamentally, business and other places of work will finally be a reflection of the country and the society in which we are. And one of the things that really, kind of troubles me, I have to say, is the low contribution of women to India's GDP. And you see here, that's 18%. So the contribution of women to India's GDP is only 18%. And that's the second lowest in this list of countries. And many of these countries are actually developing countries. And you see there are countries like Thailand, Vietnam at 40%, China at 41%. So there is a problem here at a national level. And that's, again, a mirror and a reflection of what is happening in broader society. And unfortunately, it is a vicious cycle and a reinforcing cycle of gender inequality in our society, which then leads to and feeds into economic development, attitudes and beliefs, and all of this finally reinforce each other to result in gender inequality at work. But that's, about what is, the larger kind of national context to where we are. But what is happening at work? So we did see that there is gender inequality at work. You saw the numbers earlier about a quarter of people, professionals are women at the sort of entry level, and then it just starkly comes down to 6% at senior management levels. And I'm sure I preach to the converted, and I'm sure all of you, many of you in this audience know much more than what I have put up in this chart. But there is this study which was done recently, which kind of, made me sit up, because it suggested that 79, nearly 80% of women regularly lack confidence at work. And I think that talks to the broader point that CFI and Ganesh made earlier, which is therefore the role of coaches and the role of, what we can do to really let women lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg famously said. And really, I think one of the speakers earlier said inhibitions. I think one of the award-winning coaches said, inhibitions that keep women back. And the top 3 obstacles that were cited in reaching senior roles were juggling work-life balance, lack of visible internal opportunities, and a lack of confidence in their own ability. And some of this really comes from social conditioning as well. The point that I made earlier about the sort of vicious cycle of reinforcement that we see. And nearly half, more than half actually said managing a negative mindset is also something that they have to deal with. And this I found interesting, right? Imposter syndrome. And I went, what could be an imposter syndrome? And here is what it is. And I just found this, quite interesting, though in some ways a little dispiriting as well. So I'll leave I'll probably read it out, because I don't know if you can read it from the slide. So one of the ladies go, "You're not an imposter, Cecilia." And Cecilia says, "Yeah, right. Look how far you've come. Luck. Think of everything you've done. It wasn't that hard. Consider your accomplishments. Anybody could have done them. All the awards you won, if only they knew," right? Well, at least you're good at feeling like an imposter. And even to that, Cecilia says, "I'm just okay at it." Yeah. So this is the imposter syndrome, which sort of makes women not take ownership and responsibility and pride of achievement. And that then becomes one of the mutually reinforcing cycles that keeps women back, and much more obviously in the case of women than men, right? So that's the imposter syndrome. And the reason I say this is because I think women have a big role to play. And therefore, when we talk about what is needed to change the trajectory of women in leadership roles, I think a large part of the role has to be women taking responsibility for themselves, not feeling guilty about ambition, about drive, and not necessarily going by the social conditioning or the challenges that certain lifestyle stages impose on them. So I think there's a lot that women themselves have to do as well. But fundamentally, achieving success on gender diversity in corporate India and getting more women in leadership positions requires leaders, managers, employees, and importantly, women themselves to change the way they behave. And this is kind of hard. It's not easy. And again, I've been part of this. The process does take time. It takes longer than many of us anticipate and are prepared for. And it will and does entail changes in the way that we behave, we demonstrate leadership styles, and changes that are unfamiliar and can even feel uncomfortable. And we have to live with that discomfort and grow out of it if we want to bring real changes collectively, as I said, as leaders, managers, employees, and as women. So I have 10 simple commandments that I would say would go a long way in changing, the 6% number that you saw earlier. So the first one is a belief that diversity is at the heart of better business decisions. So organizations and people, leaders, managers, employees, women themselves, everyone has to believe truly that more diversity, not just gender, it could be gender, it could be disabilities, it could be sexual orientation, it could be ethnicity, but basically people have to believe, in an organization have to believe that the more diverse the people are, you will get to better business decisions. Now, the question is why? Why should we believe that, right? Is it just something which makes a good line on a PowerPoint presentation? Why should we believe it? I have seen that if you have more diverse people around the table, you will also get diverse perspectives, opinions, views, a lively discussion, a heated debate, challenge. And that process leads to looking at any business situation, issue, or opportunity through multiple lenses, and therefore leads at the end to a better business decision. And collective and cumulative impact of lots of better business decisions then lead to better performance of companies. And there are studies here, like I've shown, McKinsey & Company is just one of them. And these studies actually show that companies which are top performers on diversity are also likely to experience better performance. Yeah. So, but fundamentally, one has to believe that diversity leads to better business decisions. So I think that's important, and that's an important condition. The second one is, diversity has to be a visible business priority for the CEO and exec leadership. It isn't enough for diversity and diversity in leadership in particular to be the sole responsibility of a few people or the HR department. Of course, they have a very important role to play. But if you genuinely want to make a step change in an organization, then it has to come from the top. And, we say that culture in an organization is driven by the CEO and the top team. The same is true of diversity. It should not just be a priority, but Ganesh, you're on mute. Were you saying
your slides are not moving. Do you have?
Oh, okay. Okay, let me stop share and let me try again. Sorry. Do you see it now? Do you see number 2? Diversity must be, yeah, okay, super. Thanks for that, Ganesh. Right, so diversity must be a visible business priority. I say visible deliberately. It's not enough for this to be a priority, but, kind of kept limited to boardroom discussions or just CXO table discussions. It has to be visible. CEO and exec leadership have to take a very public stance and a public commitment and make a commitment. Yeah. So that's the second thing that's important. I hope the slide has moved to you. Okay, super. I know this topic creates a lot of controversy sometimes about targets, and many men colleagues and friends have discomfort about targets on gender diversity in leadership roles. But in my experience, targets are an absolute must. And you know why? That's because when it's not exactly as easy to get women into leadership roles as it is to get men, and there are a lot of business challenges, performance pressures on companies and leaders in companies, if you don't have the dashboard of a target, it's very tempting and easy to fall back on, oh no, we've really tried to look for women. It's very hard to get them. And so let's just go back and get men in. So, targets hold us to account. And again, targets, if you make them somewhat public, not entirely public, but somewhat public, then absolutely it sort of, helps to put that constructive tension onto the CEO and the CXOs to say, we need to get there. So the targets are a must. And I would say that the targets have to be achievable, but they have to be stretched. I hope this one has moved. I'm looking at, okay, super. So policies, very important, but also I would say that, there are certain basic policies which are now almost foundational, right? They are in the bag, they are in the, what I would say, basic housekeeping kind of, category. Companies, if they truly want to make a difference, must have bold and at least one best-in-class policy and then parity on the rest. Because sometimes it's about, listen, how many policies do we want to exceed on multiple vectors as far as policies are concerned? And I think it's good to be the best-in-class on one and at least parity on the rest. So they are important, absolutely, but I think I would also say that they are not sufficient. Flexi hours, for example, is one of the very, very big enablers. Parental leave, which a lot of companies, including my company, which has announced recently last year, actually a 4-week paternity policy. I mean, these are, again, all very progressive and do go some way. Well, the next one is that, thanks. You need to, this whole agenda cannot be driven in any organization or larger sort of corporate world only by women, though obviously they are the more invested. We have to get the men leaders, especially in organizations, those who lead large functions. Typically, these will tend to be commercial and manufacturing teams, followed by finance, which generally tend to be large functions. We have to get them on board. And of course, it has to be voluntary, ideally. So you have to get the men in, because the fact is they still dominate positions of leadership. And unless we get the men in, you cannot really have the kind of sustained change and sustained commitment to this agenda that's required to make the difference. 6, role model women leaders in a business is very, very important for furthering the journey of women in leadership in organizations. I myself have kind of not always consciously realized this, but over the last decade or so, I've realized how important it is for women who are still in middle and junior levels of management, or even, more largely in professional networks, to be able to look up. And that's not just due to, getting inspiration from women on their functional or leadership competencies, but to just look up at somebody and say, if this person could get there, it means so can I. And that element of confirmation of possibilities is very, very important, particularly given what I said earlier about women often having sort of self-doubts and also, the imposter syndrome. So I think that's very important as well. 7 is external hiring in the short term is important, and sometimes, in fact, I would say often necessary at the early starting point of the journey in organizations, because you simply don't have enough women sometimes in the leadership pipeline. And therefore, organizations need to go out there and get some women in. But that is not a solution for the long term. In the long term, sustained talent development so that there are enough women in the leadership pipeline who can then move into sort of senior roles is very important. And that's, again, where the work that CFI and all the coaches and Ganesh and everyone are doing is so important. That sustained talent development in the long term is the only way to really break this barrier that we see for women in the long term. 8, and I've taken the liberty of putting my own company up like a half a minute sales pitch, I suppose. So corporate reputation as an employer of choice for high quality professionals, high achievers is very important for organizations and for women who are looking to take leadership roles, because women are having to make big opportunity cost trade-offs when they decide to continue to be in the career track because they have other responsibilities at home. And therefore, more than men, in my experience, for women, it's important. If organizations want to draw women in, it's important that they have a great reputation, that they are seen to be progressive, and organizations which are meritocracies, where women can feel that it is their performance and merit which counts more than who you know and who is liked is again very important. So that's what is, I would say, the 8th commandment. The 9th, again, this goes back to sometimes what can be addressed through coaching, is attacking unconscious biases. And it's incredible how even very sophisticated, exposed, evolved, progressive people can have biases which they're totally unconscious about. And these unconscious biases manifest themselves, in my experience, in various ways. It could be in terms of choosing or not choosing women for certain roles which are seen to be difficult for women. It could result in certain kinds of microaggressions at behavior at workplace, which kind of puts off women more than men who are a little bit more used to it, I suppose, etc., etc. So unconscious biases is a very, very critical area to attack for organizations and for women to play a role there as well. And finally, and for me, this is like the big aha, culture of an organization. Yeah, I think finally everything boils down to, is the culture of an organization one which actually not just attracts but retains men and women, but particularly women. And in my experience, the 4 most important things in a culture that can really enable women to flourish and take leadership positions are really 4 things. 1, valuing a culture that values people, not hierarchy, not the label that you have, not the chair that you sit on, but really the contribution that you make. And therefore, in a meeting, it doesn't, in a very important meeting, it doesn't only, for example, have to be the senior most people, but actually anyone who has worked on that particular topic, who has an opinion to give, who has a contribution to make, just giving that as an everyday behavior example. But valuing people is 1. Inviting people in, and I mean this metaphorically, which and so what I mean is really an inclusive environment where people feel they are included, they are accepted, and very, very importantly, they are encouraged to bring themselves, their own selves to work. They don't have to leave their real sense at home and come to work wearing in a different avatar. So that all is important to have an invitational, inclusive culture. Performance driven, which I spoke of earlier, that again is very, very important. Women tend to not enjoy and not flourish in organizational cultures where politics, turf fighting, who you know, who you network with are very big factors in deciding whether you get promoted or you get the big jobs that you're looking for. And finally, the experience of the organization, which is, the visceral feel of the organization, if I can call it that, has to be one which is inspirational and not just transactional. So it's not just about selling something and billing something, it's not just about activities and tasks, but the culture is one which is inspiring. So those are the 4 areas of culture which are, in my experience, really help to get women in and keep them in as well. And finally, I want to say, if it can be done in a beverage alcohol company like, Diageo India, it can be done anywhere. And that's to leave everyone back to the point around hope and optimism. And I have been part of this journey in a company, in an industry which is seen to be a male bastion, where we have a large number of women in the executive, well, not so many in the executive committee, but 3 out of 8 ain't bad. Next level of leadership, 10 out of the next 28 people are women. We moved the dial from 7.5%, pathetic 7.5%, about 6 years ago in terms of the proportion of women among the total employees to 20%, which is, hard in a large company like ours, but we've gotten there. And therefore, really, this can be done. And I think the 10 commandments have all played a role in getting us to where we are. Women now in my company, I'm very proud to say, are in very influential and key positions. They are there in multiple functions. We just clocked 100 women in our manufacturing team, which, as I said earlier, is quite difficult. And so I take away optimism and hope. To go back to what Ganesh said, it really stuck with me, that if we can do it as an alcobev company, I mean, Diageo globally is very, very good at it and is recognized and awarded globally. But in India, it was harder for us. But if we can do it, it can be done anywhere. So I'll stop there. That's all that I had for today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for
Thank you very much, Abanti.
Go ahead, Mr. Ganesh, you have any question? The first choice is yours. Mr. Ganesh?
No, I'll wait. I'm sure there are many who have.
Yes. So we got a couple of questions. In fact, those who are logged in Zoom, the chat box, if you have questions, please do share your questions. And but it's a great, inspiring address. And Abanti, you know that even the Diageo CEO is going to be a woman short while from now, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Global CEO. So that is one proud moment, I think, must be for each one of you. And there are a number of questions. We have over 1,400 viewers watching this program live on all our social media portals. And it's a great number on an evening to come and watch. That really shows the pull power of our chief guest, Abanti, this evening.
No, I think it's your pull. I have to correct you on that. It's your pull. That's on a Friday evening. So I'm quite clear about that.
We have a number of questions which have come, and I'll now take the question which has come on the YouTube first. Meanwhile, we'll wait for the questions from our chat box. One other question: one other person from Nagpur, Nagpur from Sounder, what he wants to know is, one of the multinational companies introduced a unique protection system for women who suffers from domestic violence. What's your view on this, and do you recommend more companies should adopt this policy? It will give a lot of confidence to women who undergo domestic violence, domestic issues. What's your view on this?
So domestic violence, domestic abuse is absolutely a real issue in our society. And what is really, I suppose at one level quite sad, is that it knows no income segment. I think it cuts across income segments. So even people who work in companies or multinational companies or large Indian companies, you may find women workers who are subject to that abuse. So I think absolutely, companies should look at what they can do. One simple thing that is possible is really to have, coaches. Going back to the point that was mentioned earlier, I think if you have coaches, they can play a big role in really unearthing the kind of barriers and issues that are confronting women. It doesn't necessarily have to be a flag bearer domestic abuse program, support program. It can be woven into coaching. It could be woven into counseling services, which a lot of companies provide. But absolutely, it's a real issue, and I think companies must address it in different ways.
Yeah.
Yes,
Captain, if I may add, we did a follow-up research during the pandemic, and our research suggested that 77% of the respondents said that the pandemic had affected women more adversely than men. And we had a great conversation with Nirmala, and I'd like to invite Nimi to come in and say a word or two about this and the issue of domestic violence and the impact of the pandemic on women.
For sure, it's certainly taken a toll on women, for sure, because they are the caregivers, so they're caring for the sick, they're caring for the children are online, and work demands then kind of take a backseat because at home the urgent gets taken care of more than the important in a lot of ways for a lot of women. So it's a very unfair burden that they carry. And on this topic of violence, on domestic abuse and domestic violence, many times we tend to think of it as something physical. Of course, the physical is there and very, very obvious. But there's also the psychological violence that tends to happen, where women are, kind of not given their space, not given, I know some very senior women that face abuse in a psychological sense. Their husbands kind of talking them down, not giving them the space they need, can't make decisions. And, and these are sometimes women that are role models in their organization, and they have no place to go. Where do I go with my problems? I cannot let everybody else down. And that's such an unfortunate place to be. So I'm all for organizations actually helping people to understand, both men and women, because a lot of men also tend to think that abuse is only physical, right? So how are they even thinking about their wives and, you know, the contributions that they are making and the struggles that they are going through? I think we need to open everybody's eyes to the inequities that actually exist. So to me, it's something that organizations can do, because personally, I very, very strongly believe organizations are very powerful vehicles of social change. And, you know, you have a captive audience and you really kind of get them to think and reflect. Hopefully it will change society as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Nirmala.
Thank you, madam. Another question which has come again from the Facebook viewer is, what are the first steps which companies should take to equal out the ground and improve the representations of women in any given industry? And we also have a question from the chat box, something similar to that from Ms. Purvi. He said, what are the kind of profiles you hire females in your organization?
So just so I understand the first question, Group Captain. So it was about, was it about?
How the company should equal out opportunities for women in the organization, representation of women in the industry, actually. Otherwise, there's always a feeling there's a discrimination is there against women. They don't get all the job. But today, I think, as you mentioned, we have a woman fighter pilot and much more they do. Why can't we have an equal opportunity for women and equal wages, equal salary? There is always an issue which impacts the women employees in a big way.
You know, so I think everything that I shared in terms of the 10 commandments, I believe are finally the sort of the cumulative impact of those is what will and does lead to having more women in organizations and doing well. I think the thing that we all have to bear in mind is organizations, particularly corporates, are ultimately commercial organizations which have to deliver performance, have to meet shareholder expectations, and generally, therefore, have to deliver, as we call it, right? And therefore, you know, finally, as business leaders, people have to make choices on the basis of merit and fundamental competence. And I think that's also what women want, right? Professional women, well-educated women who take pride in their work and their contributions also want to earn their spot, right? So they don't want a favor. None of us want a favor. We all want to earn because we believe we deserve it. And therefore, I think it's really a combination of making sure that there are enough women who are at the entry levels, making sure that there are leadership programs that develop men and women at middling levels, but also when you're looking at the CXO level, when companies look at succession, leadership succession. So we spend a lot of time, at least twice in a year, looking at our leadership succession. We always look at what's the gender split in the pipeline. And if we find that for certain roles, oh my God, 9 out of 10 in the pipeline are women, are men, then we say, no, we've got to change this, and therefore faster, accelerated leadership, improvement for the levels below, for women who are already in the organization, or otherwise hire women from outside. So I think it's a cumulative impact of everything that we said, but it has to be earned, right? None of us want to get a favor. We are all expecting to earn it, is what I would also say. On the question of profiles, I would say, the profiles are what are right for performance on the job. And therefore, but one of the interesting things that we've started doing is we've started insisting that any recruitment partner that we use or search firm that we use must bring us women profiles as well. And it's amazing how this simple act itself kind of broadens the consideration set. You'll be amazed how often for many senior roles, you get a bunch of CVs with almost no or just 1 or 2 women. So, little things like that. Similarly, we are starting to actually take out age or marital status from the CV. We say we don't want to look at that because why is it relevant? Yeah. So some of those things also are good ways of taking out inherent biases or creating more opportunities, equal opportunities for women. The pay parity piece. Normally in sort of well-run organizations, it's really a reflection of fewer women in middle and senior leadership roles rather than companies paying a woman less than a man for the same job. So if there are more women in middle and senior levels of management, it will get corrected.
Okay, we got another 10-15 minutes. I'll try and squeeze in as many questions as possible. One other question which has come from Mr. Venkatesh is again from YouTube. What he wants to know is that, Diageo acquired UB, and you spoke quite about culture. The culture of UB vis-a-vis Diageo, I think, must have been totally different. How did you manage to get the people on board to follow the Diageo culture vis-a-vis the earlier culture adopted by UB?
So it's an interesting and very relevant question, but I want to start by saying that, USL, actually, the spirits company was what Diageo acquired. USL culture had many good things about it. And, it was and obviously now is a very successful company. And I'll start with complete humility as a person who was working for Diageo at that time, to say, there were many things about the USL culture that we wanted to absolutely. There was an entrepreneurial spirit. There was a bias for action and execution. There was speed, agility. There was kind of more aggression in the marketplace, which is always good. So there were lots to say for that culture. I think the bit that Diageo certainly brought in was a more inclusive culture, and a culture which genuinely believed that everyone, irrespective of hierarchy or level, must be encouraged and enabled to be at their best and do the best work of their careers in Diageo, and create the conditions for people to do that. And every person, irrespective of their level, their role, must see themselves as part of the whole and playing an important role in the organization. So I think it was the inclusive element which Diageo dialed up much more. And the magic here was, inclusivity. And feeling included is a fundamental human aspiration, right? Everyone wants that. And senior people have also gone through a period when they weren't so senior and they might have felt excluded. So I think it appealed to everyone, not just the Diageo folks, but also to USL folks, and it is gender agnostic. And I think that just helped in embedding it. It did mean that some senior people felt that some of the privileges and entitlements that they used to enjoy may have gone. This is a public domain information, so I can share it, but, there were reserved car parks in the car park. There was a elevator, which was only for, the Mancom. The first day that we came virtually, or the first week, we changed all that, right? So a more kind of equalized workplace where, yeah, everyone knows you're senior, but you don't necessarily have to have some overt signs of it. So I don't think it was the culture change happened in a day, but it certainly didn't take very long because of the inherent appeal of a more inclusive culture, a less hierarchical culture that Diageo was bringing in.
Super. Another question from Mr. Jain. What do you want to know is, what's the toughest challenge you faced being a woman? And from your profile, you travel around the world. You've taken assignments in UK, USA, in the hotel industry. But today, many women compromise the growth, especially promotions, because they want to take care of the family and children. So what's your view on this? And would you like to share your experience, how you managed and able to manage the balance between the family and the work?
So I have a husband, and I have twins who are now, of course, 22. They are graduates now. So I have, kind of brought up twins. I've never lived with my parents or my in-laws because we've been in different cities. So pretty much we've been a nuclear family, and we've, kind of plodded on and tumbled on and been reasonably okay parents, I suppose. And I just want to also say here that for me, I'm very clear that family is my first priority and has always been. And so, that was always very clear to me, and I made it very clear to people that I worked with. But having said which, how did I manage? I think two things, three things actually, I should say. One is I was fortunate to have an incredibly supportive spouse, and I think one of the award-winning coaches said this earlier, right? And acknowledge the family and the spouse. So I think that really makes a huge difference, and that's also why I say that men have to be in the conversation, because genuinely, it's very, very hard for a woman to succeed in very demanding careers unless they have a very supportive spouse. At the minimum, it's great if she has supportive parents and in-laws as well, but the spouse is an absolute must. And so one of the little advices that I give young women colleagues is marry wisely, because that's a decision in your hands, right? And therefore, if you marry wisely, then it in some ways is a surer guarantee of a continued career track than many other things that we may give credit for. So that's one. The second is I have never stopped being driven. And I think for me, professional success is very important. And I have not felt ashamed or guilty of pursuing it, because in my head, I also know that, family is important and I'm doing best for my family. But I've realized that it's not, it needn't be. For me, it wasn't about either or, it was about fulfilling myself to the fullest. And that was personally important to me. And that gave me the resilience, the commitment to all my priorities. But you have to know that, right? You have to know that you are driven for a professional success as much as you may want to be a good wife and mother and all of that. So I continued to have drive and ambition for myself, and I didn't let go of that. And the third and final thing is, I have not pursued perfection. I think striving for perfection in all the roles that women do is often a recipe for stress, anxiety, sometimes being neither good and at the family end or the career end, sometimes leaving the career track altogether. So like they say, let perfect not be the enemy of the good. So, there are phases in your life when the house will not be perfect, when you won't be able to get, go for every PTA of your kids. When, maybe something at work isn't perfect, and, you kind of realize that's fine. So, yeah, I would say those are the three things that have helped me.
Wonderful.
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead, Mr. Ganesh.
There is always this thing about what is important, and I want your perspective, Abanti, that at one level are enabling policies and environment in the organization to support, including policies, practices, men, and so on. And then are the intrinsic abilities of women to say, be the environment what it is, I'm going to take charge and shape my destiny. How and when does that switch happen? And, what is your own perspective on the balance between these two dimensions?
So I think two things really are important for women to take charge of their own destiny, particularly in organizations. The first one is there needs to be a minimum threshold of women in senior roles, because, and I think you made the point, Ganesh, about support networks, about having allies, having people who you feel comfortable to to reach out to for various things. And a single woman on an executive leadership team, which, by the way, I was for some time after Diageo took over USL, can be very lonely. So I think there is like 3 or 4 women in a team of 10, 12 makes a huge difference. So I think that is when, culture starts changing, women start having a voice. Second is absolutely when women themselves become senior or are in roles of influence. How can you lean in and how can you really pull up? It's like they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. What can you do in your sort of position to lift the others up? I think for that, obviously, you need to be in a senior enough position. I think those can be the 2 turning points in an organizational ecosystem. Personal and individual, of course, I have shared, I think women really have to want it. You have to want to be the best that you can professionally as much as you want to be a great wife and a mother. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Super. There is an observation from Shivakumar, more than a question. He feels the number of intakes in IITs, IIM has gone up very substantially. He says 15, 20 years from now onwards, there won't be any worry about women in leadership positions. Now we have Viswanathan Vaidyanathan. What he wants to know is, women are really stressed in working from home scenario as they have to take care of many responsibilities. How can this be addressed? Because many women feel working from home is not working for the office, working for home only.
I can't agree with this more. I've heard this in my own organization. I have felt it myself. I can tell you that in the 9 months of work from home that I have had, I have learned the fine art of going and putting tarka on dal in between Zoom meetings. Yeah, so absolutely true. And I think it has taken a greater toll on women, particularly women with young children who also need to be assisted through online education and schooling. Again, I come back to women really sort of finding their voice in the family context. And women have to demand more from the family, from their spouses, from their children, from parents if they are living, and reach out for help. Sometimes, like I said, we feel that we have to be perfect. We take on the society's expectation of being super women. We have to be women who can juggle multiple balls in the air instead of being comfortable to be vulnerable, being comfortable to be less than perfect, and to reach out and ask for help and to demand. I mean, why children clear the table and wash the dishes? Now, there's no point in kind of feeling like a superwoman and a heroine while you are sort of absorbing all the anxieties yourself. So I think you have to find your voice within the family in a work from home context. But the other thing that I found in my own experience very interesting, and I was at one level amused by that as well, was my children in particular, suddenly through hearing me, seeing me, observing me on multiple Zoom calls and in all the work from home meetings, suddenly had a different perspective about me and what I do and how I show up at work, which they never had earlier, because I would just leave the home and then they would see me come back. So I was only the mother for them because they only saw me at, outside of office. But suddenly the office coming to home, I mean, they are, of course, 22, my twins. So, they kind of get it. Younger children won't get it. But suddenly I think absolutely there was a greater appreciation for what I do and how tough it is. And I think that itself kind of paid its own dividends, because I think there's a greater appreciation for the juggling and the toughness of the challenge of managing multiple fronts. So I think that for me was a positive out of the work from home situation.
Yeah, great insight, ma'am. Here's a question from our social media portal, Sunindi. What she wants to know is, what can be done for the pull down syndrome, where women pull each other down instead of supporting and encouraging each other?
Well, I mean, what else can I say but to say that, hopefully the organization culture, and that's why my 10th commandment was about culture, is one where no man or woman is allowed to pull other colleagues down. And I really do mean that, because I know of cultures where people feel that the only way to get to the top or to stay at the top is by pulling others down. And that kind of leadership style or leadership behavior is not frowned upon or condemned. Equally, there are cultures, and I can say that in Diageo. I mean, if I was pulling others down, men or women, yeah, it doesn't matter, it's gender agnostic. I mean, I would just get feedback within the first 6 months of that behavior being, observed. And I would have to make a choice. Do I continue to display this behavior and I'll be shown the door, because I'll be told you may be functionally competent, but you don't meet up to the leadership standards that we have, which is absolute opposite of pulling down. A leader has to pull up people and create leaders. Like Mao said, let 1,000 flowers bloom. You have to let leaders bloom. And if that is the expectation from my leadership, then I won't do it, even if I'm psychologically biased to pulling people down. I won't do it, because then my career will be finished. So I would say, it comes down to the culture in an organization.
Thank you. Before I take two last questions before we almost come to the end of the session now. The comment you think I thought I must read it out because so many social media people also watching this. It's a comment from Indu. What she says: Abanti, fine screen presence, clear voice, and no standard glitches. Thank you. Next question is the global views on diversity, gender equality. Is diversity on the rise as gender equality increase? US being a global company, what's your perspective on this issue?
Yeah, so my perspective is, absolutely diversity. I think diversity beyond gender is where, honestly, many countries and corporations in countries, particularly in the Western part of the world, are going. I think in India, for us, there is still, as we are discussing, a long way to go on gender diversity. But in many other countries, particularly now, UK, Europe, US, I think it's not just about gender, it's widened to also include ethnicity. And fundamentally, I think the big sort of societal shift that has happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and certainly pronounced during the pandemic and its impact, is the deep sort of fissures in society and the big structural inequalities in society. And companies and large corporations are either already being held to account or will be asked to be held to account on. You can't just look the other way. I think Nirmala put that very well, that organizations have the power and the resources to make a difference. And I think stakeholders, including investors and shareholders, are starting to hold companies to account, or at least starting to ask questions. As Diageo, even in India, I can tell you that we have been asked questions on ESG, environment, sustainability, and governance kind of questions from a couple of our big investors who hold material percentage of shares in our company. So I think that's the direction of travel. It's not just gender, it's widened to generally, underprivileged, equal opportunity for underprivileged sections, including ethnicity. I think Black Lives Matter has played a big role, and large societal inequalities around the world has really sort of awakened something and stirred something up in the corporate world.
Here's a question from Mr. Chadda from Delhi. What he wants to know is, does the panel believe that women in general have to work much more harder than men to prove their worth, or is it a subjective perception?
I would love to actually hear the others also, but I think yes to working much harder because of the multiple roles that we bring on ourselves and that society expects of us. So it's the famous triple shift syndrome, right? You finish your work in the morning at home, whatever you have to attend to, you go off at work, you come back, and then there's the rest of it. So it's the 3-shift syndrome. And that obviously means that women are working harder. But I don't really believe that women have to work harder than men to get to senior levels. I think men have to work and work incredibly hard. I absolutely will not take the view that, it's somehow harder for women to get there professionally.
Thank you, ma'am. Still, I got 2 more minutes. I'll squeeze in one
Nirmala,
last
do you have a
question.
view on this? Nirmala, do you have a view on this?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I certainly agree. It is harder for women. Many times it's the societal expectation which you have so strongly imbibed that the glass ceiling is in your head. I mean, I'm a typical case of that, which is what I was saying. It took me a while to realize that I could do what I wanted and the world will accept it. So I think age did that for me. So now we are telling the younger people, say, just go ahead and do it. Forgiveness is easier than permission.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last question is from Chandramohan Trichy. What do you want to know? Despite examples of successful women such as late Jayalalitha, Mamta Banerjee, Mayawati, etc., women are usually not given preference by political parties while choosing the candidates for contesting elections. Why this is disparity, and what time frame do you think this change in India? I don't know how much you can answer, but this is a question which even parliamentary not able to solve a 50% reservation. But I think maybe yes, but your views on this.
So I think it's in some ways similar to what I said about corporations have to ultimately deliver performance and results and are accountable to shareholders. I think political parties ultimately have to deliver wins at the elections. And therefore, the winnability of candidates is an important aspect for consideration. And I think, therefore, women who come from a political family or have strong political mentors are more electable. And therefore, some of the names that you mentioned absolutely make it. Not all of them, some really come up the hard way. So there are exceptions. And therefore, the larger question is, why are women not so electable or felt to be electable? And that then goes back to, the whole societal thing. And, it's hard for women to suddenly turn up and feel like they can win elections, even if it's a corporation level election, if they don't have a voice in their microcosm of society. It's hard, right? So I think that's the societal aspect which we have to break. But, I want to say we do a lot of work in rural areas, and this rule that is there, this law that is there now about, I think, a woman sarpanch or head of the panchayat every, I think, by rotation, that there is something that's mandated. I think that kind of has allowed women, and I've seen that for myself in some of the rural communities where we do social impact work, it has actually women come up. Not just the lady who became the sarpanch. There's this lady in Alwar village who I met, who was the sarpanch. But she was telling me how, because she became the sarpanch, there was, a women's self-help group got created, and women would actually find the courage to come out for meetings. And their men who would otherwise have dissuaded them from going to attend meetings, what is this, what self-help group, etc. Suddenly, even they became more permissive, because I think there was a woman sarpanch, and they were just aware that there was a power center there. So I think those are small but significant changes that will bring more women into the political mainstream as well. So again, I will just end. I know this was probably the last question, by going back to what Ganesh said. There's a lot about what's happening, which should fill us with hope and optimism for the future.
Thank you, Abanti, for the thought-provoking insights, which I'm quite sure beneficial not only to the women who are watching this program, but a lot of men folks would have benefited from this management inputs and insights what you shared this evening. Thank you so much. As a token of our appreciation, since you are staying so far away from here, we are not able to really physically give you the presentation, which otherwise we'd like to do that. On behalf of CFI, on behalf of MMA, we would like to present 500 masks. This is what we do. On behalf of you, what we do is we go around places, we give it over to NGOs, various slum clusters, make sure, educate them that they must wear a mask, because till the vaccine reaches everyone, I think this is what will protect them from all the things. Thank you so much for really, we appreciate you accepting our
Thank you
give
so
a
much
mask.
for having me. Thank you.
Thank
It
you,
was
Abanti.
wonderful.
And
Thank you.
Suresh is the CEO of CFI. May I request Suresh to please deliver your formal word of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Suresh.
Thank you, Vijay. And respected chief guest, special invitees, MMA delegates, CFI coach members, and my dear friends. I thank MMA for giving me the opportunity to express my gratitude on this special day. A special day in the history of our firm in jointly hosting the 8th Raghupillai Memorial Lecture. With over 1,400 representatives participating this evening, this is a huge success in itself. On behalf of CFI, I express my heartfelt thanks to the chief guest Abanti Sankaranarayanan for her inspiring, insightful perspectives and 10 commandments on women in leadership, besides some very practical nuggets of wisdom about realizing your dreams, role model behavior, and living a fulfilling life. Thank you, Abanti. I was deeply inspired and touched by many of what you said. I thank Nirmala Menon and the She Leads team of coach facilitators and the CFI coach members for their contributions and their presence. Special thanks to you, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, Executive Director of the Madras Management Association, for organizing, and the organizing team in MMA, including Sundar and Mohan, for all the lovely arrangements that you have made, without which this event would not have been possible. And thank you once again. I would also like to thank our advertising agency, Rubicon, for all the advertising support, and the CFI team, including Savitri and Sangeeta, for their support in curating and or promoting the event. Lastly, but surely not the least, a very special thanks to Vaishnavi Chella, Assistant Director of CFI, for her relentless efforts in, in championing and promoting the cause of women leadership with She Leads. Her invaluable research, along with her involvement in the product development and subsequently in the flawless execution of the program, has hugely contributed to the success and in its becoming a sought-after offering from CFI. Before I sign off, I'm pleased to inform that the next batch of She Leads will commence on April 15th, and the formal registrations for this batch begins today. As there are limited seats, while the registrations are open till March 15th, we're confident that given the turnout of today's evening, this batch will fill to capacity much sooner. Thank you once again for your participation today, and wishing you all a great weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Stay safe, stay healthy. Just before I want to close, let me remind you, we are lined up some outstanding events in the month of February, more than 13 events. One is starting on the 3rd about budget review by some outstanding panelists, including Arun Kumar is a Jawaharlal Nehru University adjunct professor. He's going to be talking on bisect, dissect, and see through that magnifying glass. Do join, and till then, stay safe, stay healthy. And till we meet again, bye-bye and good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Abanti. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Ganesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Abanti. Thank you, Nirmala.